then you know why I feel blue without Peggy. My Peggy.
So, I'm at camp right now. I work at a camp over the summers. And we were talking. And one of the guys that follows me on Twitter briefly mentioned I have a podcast. And they all of a sudden wanted to hear it. And my first thought was, that's awesome. We got new listeners. We always welcome listeners. My second thought was, oh shit, they're gonna listen. They're gonna realize how they were like, that's got to be the funniest thing in the world. And now like the expectations are so high that it's only gonna be downhill from here.
Right.
Which means we got to be put on our A game.
Yeah. This is we bring our A game every episode. I like to think, but definitely make sure we're on top of our game again.
I'm nailing a couple. I feel like I nailed in the last one, if we're being honest.
The last one, yeah.
But hey, this one we're bringing it.
No, we always bring it, man.
You know why we're bringing it this one?
Huh?
You know why we're bringing it this one?
Why is that?
This is 60's, and this is the peak of music, I believe.
There's a good argument to be made. I think, like we kind of mentioned this earlier, but like if you had to pick 10 years of music to only listen to the rest of your life, it'd probably be like 65 to 75. As compared to like just a straight decade like the 60s, but yeah, the 60s is part of that era, so definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome back to episode 2 of season 2, Music Through the Decades. This week we're talking about the 60s. If you haven't already, make sure that you follow, subscribe, and rate us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher was the one I think I forgot last week, and all the other apps.
Fuck Stitcher.
Fuck Stitcher. What have they done for us?
What have they done for... I would be shocked if one of our listeners came from Stitcher. If you listen to this podcast and you use Stitcher, DM us or something. I don't know. I want to know.
Yeah. Like us on Facebook, Drinking Buddies Podcast. Follow us on Twitter. We have a great Twitter account. I actually haven't checked Joe Jonas's Wikipedia page lately. I'm assuming it's not the alleged edit we made is off of it, but I'm going to check that right now. But yeah, we do a lot of great stuff.
You should check that.
I'm checking it.
I am so sick of Joe Jonas. He is just so arrogant and makes horrible music.
Yeah, it's gone. So that's sad. I guess we'll have to do something else.
It was fun while it lasted.
We'll do something else to Joe Jonas later. You want to dive right into it?
Let's do it.
Alrighty. So,
Hold on. So if you hear a lag or anything in the background, that's because I'm recording in the woods right now.
Yeah, we're doing
using
this.
a friend's hotspot.
There's nothing that will stop us from recording this podcast.
We are committed to our fans.
It is exemplified by Noah's. I can see him because we're on Skype with his phone flashlight on. In the woods, there's crickets and noises about, and he's in it.
I think I just saw a mountain lion, but I'm just gonna keep drinking and keep talking.
So what are you drinking this week?
Oh, yeah, we totally forgot about it again. I'm drinking Tecate, a classic beer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all there is to say about that.
I'm drinking.
How about you?
I'm drinking a Finkel and Garth, which is a brewery in Boulder. It's a cream ale. It's good. It's creamy, as said by the name.
Are you from Colorado or something?
I might be in Colorado right now.
Yeah.
So we're going to go right off the bat, and I think we're going to talk about Motown first, because we prepared 0 Motown artists when leading up to this podcast.
My mind blanked.
Yeah,
I've been a little busy training to be a lifeguard, because I'm a garter of lives, and that's what I do now.
It's not a lifeguard of the sea. You're just guarding lives in general.
It's a pool. Yeah, I'm guarding life in general. It's a pool, and I just tell kids not to run on the side.
Yeah.
But I got to be trained, so.
You're that asshole.
Yeah. So Motown, though.
Yeah.
There are flies buzzing around because they're attracted to the light. Commitment! This is commitment right here.
Alright, so I'm going to list off some Motown artists, and if we have anything to say about them, we will. The first is the Supremes.
The Supremes.
Yes.
I can't think of a song, but I know I like them.
Yep, alrighty.
They're an all-woman group, if I'm correct.
Sure.
Oh, I just thought, is David Bowie's mostly 70s, right?
Yeah, we can put him in the 70s.
Alright, cool, because I completely forgot about him.
Supremes are an all-women's group. So that was a good fact you knew.
Alright, so that's all I know about them.
Marvin Gaye.
I know they're good. I know I like them when I listen to them.
Yeah.
What was that?
Marvin Gaye.
Okay, Marvin Gaye is fantastic. He is one of my favorite voices of all time. Came to a tragic end. I mean, you got Sexual Healing, What's Going On. That whole album is fantastic. So socially relevant at the time, and really right now. He does great duets with Tammy Terrell. You're All I Need to Get By is a great song. He's got so much soul. He's got some R&B. Oh, he's fantastic. He's one of my favorite artists from the 60s. He's probably top 5, maybe a top 5 artist from the 60s.
Wow, that's high praise.
What's Going On, though, is his go-to album.
Yeah, for sure.
If you want to dabble with some Marvin Gaye.
Stevie Wonder.
Do you know how Marvin Gaye died?
Oh, no, I don't, actually.
Hold on. Do you know how Marvin Gaye died?
No, I don't.
His dad shot him.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it is terrible.
Alrighty, so on that note, let's move on to the man who can clearly see, Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, I forgot about that episode.
Yeah.
Alright, what's your opinions on him?
He must have a thing for sunglasses because he wears them everywhere he goes, even though he can see. He has a great voice, great songwriter. I'm totally blanking on the names of his songs right now, but I'm like hearing it in my head.
I got it up right now.
But I'm gonna get mad at myself when you name them.
We got Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
Yeah.
Higher Ground.
Higher Ground was the one I was thinking of.
Superstitious.
Yeah, and Superstitious.
Okay.
Yeah.
I Wish, Boogie on a Reggae Woman.
Yep. So it's just a classic, classic kind of. This isn't my idea. This is my dad's. He said this, and then I couldn't agree with him more. I think Stevie Wonder is got the best intro to songs. They're always just so groovy and just catchy. I'm gonna have to re-listen for
every
that.
intro to his hits.
Yeah.
You're gonna text me tomorrow, and you'll be like, "You're absolutely correct."
I'm gonna re-listen for that, and because I like that stuff. Yeah, that's an interesting thing to look out for. Aretha Franklin.
Yeah, I hear an owl in the background.
Oh wow,
That's cool.
Are you with Bear Grylls?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing one of those special episodes, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, who's the next Motown?
Aretha Franklin.
Got a great voice. An all-timer. I'm trying to... Chain of Fools is a classic. I mean, she's got my theme song, which I actually don't know why it's not an intro to the podcast. Son of a Preacher Man.
Make me feel like a natural woman?
But she's also sings Son of a Preacher Man. And that's the only song she sings that matters.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fitting.
Yeah, my dad's a priest, so that's why.
Yeah, that's fitting.
Yeah.
I was thinking
it's my theme song.
I thought you were talking about You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman for your theme song, but the other one makes more sense.
No, that is Carole King, and I'm going to talk about Carole King next episode, because I think she's got one of the best albums from the 70s. I think it's the 70s.
Alrighty, well, let's hope it's the 70s. We're talking about it next week.
Talking about it tonight.
Yeah. Are there any other Motowns that you want to dive into? I think I can take on James Brown as another. He's not Motown per se. He might be actually, but he's more R&B.
Yeah, I gotta talk about the Temptations.
Oh, I forgot about them.
Temptations are I think
their songs just put you in
is one of the early. What was that?
Their songs just put you in a good mood.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Ball of Confusion is one of the ancestors to rap, though. And it's a great song, socially relevant, talks about a lot of social issues of the 60s. Mm-hmm. But overall, one of probably my favorite Motown artist besides Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any other ones that you want to cover?
I can't think of one, but I know we're missing some. We're gonna miss so many.
Yeah,
many.
We should say this off the bat. We're gonna miss a lot of artists, a lot of great artists this episode. We're gonna try and hit people later, like Simon and Garfunkel. I think we're gonna just talk about Paul Simon's solo career later, so kind of cover him in that. I think we're gonna miss like the Animals, and are we gonna miss the Animals?
You were gonna miss the Animals.
Yeah, and the CCR we're gonna miss probably.
Yeah.
So there's just some that we just don't have time to get to.
One of the best voices of all time is John Fogerty.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna talk about James Brown. He was not Motown per se. He was more just an R&B guy. But his album Live at the Apollo is one of the classic all-time albums. He lived a hard lifestyle. He was very politically active in the civil rights movement. He
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, he was. But he also had a lot of legal troubles and some drug abuse later on in life. He worked hard and he played hard. Yeah. Alrighty, so what's the first
Gotta
band?
respect that.
Yeah. What's the first band you're going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons real quick. If you don't know who they are, they're the band that Jersey Boys is about.
I didn't know that.
And they just made a lot of great pop hits. December 1963, Who Loves You, Walk Like a Man. A lot of songs that if you listen to, you'll be like, oh, that's a great song. But maybe you can't think of them right now. Also a great musical. I saw it, and that's part of the reason I'm talking about them. Super cool story, which I'm assuming is 100% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was pretty awesome.
The next band that I'm going to talk about is Velvet Underground. They're kind of like the black sheep of the British invasion, more or less. I mean, they're British, but they're kind of a New York band, I guess. Well, like the 60s is kind of defined by the psychedelic movement and, the use of drugs like LSD. The Velvet Underground was very based in...
Heroin?
Yes, heroin. Their drug was heroin. They were very nihilistic. So I've heard them kind of described as like the Beatles' evil twin, which kind of fits. They're really influential to what becomes punk, just because of that kind of nihilistic, the way they creatively just don't conform to typical song structures. Their album, The Velvet Underground and Nico, the one with the banana, is one of the all-time greatest albums. There's a saying that's commonly refrained when talking to that album that it didn't sell very well when it came out, and there's a saying that 50,000 people bought it, but everyone who bought it ended up starting a band because it was just so influential and so groundbreaking for what they were doing. Yeah,
I was actually about to say that.
Yeah.
I also just Louis Reed, whatever the fuck his name is, I don't know how to pronounce it. I've been horrible at pronouncing stuff lately. Is one of the legends of rock and roll.
Yeah, for sure. Lou is not a hard name to pronounce, but yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm gonna take that as my turn.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about the Rolling Stones. I'm not anti-Rolling Stones by any means, but I'm not the biggest fan. I'm talking a lot of British Invasion because they're legends, of course. I mean, just that whole era and that whole movement. But Rolling Stones, you got Mick Jagger, one of the best frontmans of any band of all time. The real album the only album of the Stones I've really gotten into was Exile on Main Street. It was their double album. A lot of classic songs on it. Rip This Joint. You got Keith Richards, a great guitarist. I get why they're one of the greatest bands, but not really my thing. I don't know. Like I enjoy listening to them, but I don't like choose to listen to them super often. But they were incredibly influential. Nailed it.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree. They're one of those bands that are very influential, but like there's just so many other great bands of that era that I just don't often listen to them. I usually choose to listen to someone else from that era. Yeah. They're good. There's no doubting that they're one of the all-time greats. So I'm gonna combine a couple bands for my third pick. I'm gonna combine the Yardbirds and Cream because of Eric Clapton. He was in both those bands. So the Yardbirds was Eric Clapton's first band. They were more of a pop band, and that's exactly why he left. Eric Clapton's a disciple of the Robert Johnsons, the T-Bone Walkers, in kind of true Delta blues, and so he didn't like the cookie cutter, or what he felt was the cookie cutter, 3-minute pop songs that they're being asked to produce with the Yardbirds. The Yardbirds, a notable song.
You know what? Hold on.
Yeah.
A fun fact about the Yardbirds is they had one of the 3 greatest guitarists of all time.
Yeah.
They had Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and
Jeff Beck.
Jeff Beck, yes. 3 of the greatest guitarists of all time.
Yeah, so I was actually going to just about talk
Keep
about
going,
that
though,
story.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just about to mention that was a good segue, because I looked up that story of how all 3 of them were involved. So Eric Clapton left right after their big single For Your Love came out due to the musical differences. And when he left, he actually recommended a young studio session guitarist who was really talented named Jimmy Page. But Jimmy Page actually refused to fully join the band due to loyalty to Clapton, and so he recommended Jeff Beck. And so that's how they all actually recommended each other in like a weird way, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So anyway, Eric Clapton left.
Yeah. There's also another.
Yeah, go for it.
Another fun fact is Eric Clapton, on the song, we may or may not talk about the Beatles later, but the song While My Guitar Gently Weeps, there's a guitar going throughout it. That's played by Eric Clapton, who was good friends with George Harrison.
That's super cool. Yeah. So he later went on to be in Cream, which is kind of a super group with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker. Some of their notable songs. Crossroads is actually a cover of the Robert Johnson song. They had made so many classics: Sunshine of Your Love, White Room, all that fun stuff.
Cool.
Go for it.
Alrighty. I'm gonna talk about The Who was one of my favorite bands growing up for sure. They have an all-star cast. Not cast, that's not the right word.
Lineup.
With Keith Moon, one of the best lineup, thank you. One of the best drummers of all time. He was fucking wild. How he passed away, I can't remember when. 78 actually, I remember. He passed away because he took like 40 shots of tequila or something. And he didn't pass away because of alcohol poisoning. He died because he threw up and choked on his vomit. Which is like not a great way to die at all. But it's crazy that he could survive 40 shots of alcohol and not get alcohol poisoning.
That's incredible.
But he was an incredible drummer. One of the most legendary guitarists of all time, Pete Townsend. The windmill where like you strum and then do the wheel around thing. Pete Townsend, he either created it or made it popular. Roger Daltrey is a great singer.
I think he made it popular, but he was like the first one to do it on stage. It was like a warm-up of sorts he did. And I've read stuff that Pete Townsend, at first, his dream was just to be the studio guitarist for The Who. He really didn't like touring. And so that's kind of like a gimmick he did to just just to do something for the audience, because he wasn't super comfortable at least at first. And so that's kind of how that started.
That's a good fun fact.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of good hits. Bob O'Reilly is the one everybody knows. Some people think it's called Teenage Wasteland. Who Are You is a classic song. The Seeker, Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere. A couple great albums. Tommy. Yeah, just a really solid band.
Yep. Alrighty. So I'm gonna move into more blues based. Eric Clapton was kind of my segue for that. I'm gonna quickly talk about a guy by the name of T-Bone Walker. He was actually first active in the 40s. For some reason, he was not active at all in the 50s, and he was active again in the 60s, which is why I can talk about him now. He was enormously influential. He was a Delta blues artist, hugely influential to Chuck Berry. He's the reason B.B. King bought a guitar, was listening to one of his records, an electric guitar specifically. And then he was the first one to play the guitar with his teeth as like a trick, and that Jimi Hendrix later imitated that trick, but he imitated it specifically from T-Bone Walker. I'm also going to group in B.B. King here as well, because I just mentioned him. He's nicknamed King of the Blues. He was widely looked up to T-Bone Walker, and his album Live at Cook County Jail is one of my favorite albums of all time. Perhaps my favorite part of the whole album, besides like the actual songs, is in the intro. There's like a lady introducing B.B. King and the band. But before she does that, she introduces to the whole jailhouse the warden and the county judge, and all the inmates just boo. It's hilarious, and it's on the album. But yeah, it's a little fun fact there.
Yeah, I love B.B. King. He's an incredible guitarist. Great live music. Was that it?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna talk about the Beach Boys. Beach Boys is they had a little bit of a rivalry with the Beatles, which I thought was really fun. Their quintessential album is Pet Sounds, which one of the greatest albums of all time, if not the greatest pop album of all time. It's crazy. Every song is perfectly placed. A lot of hits, a lot of not songs maybe you wouldn't know. It was Brian Wilson's masterpiece, the guy who wrote all the songs and the lead singer. And it is truly an incredible album, but they have a lot of good albums. Friends is a good album. Wild Honey is decent. Good story about Pet Sounds, though, is so Brian Wilson wrote it, and Paul McCartney heard and listened to Pet Sounds, Paul McCartney of the Beatles, and him and, of course, the other Beatles wrote Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and that supposedly sent Brian Wilson into a what's the term?
Depression?
Kind of depressive, a mental breakdown.
Okay.
But an incredible album. That's what they're known for. Incredible band. Somehow underrated, I feel like, because they are truly something else.
Awesome. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do another pair of blues artists who are closely related. The first of which is Muddy Waters. He's another disciple of Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson, as we mentioned in a past podcast, his recorded his stuff in the 30s, and we kind of referenced that his stuff doesn't come up again till much later, and it's really now here in the early 60s with Muddy Waters, and then Eric Clapton and guys like that. He's cited as kind of bridging the gap between Delta blues and kind of rock blues, because he was kind of the first guy to use amplifiers with the blues sound. His notable songs, I Just Want to Make Love to You and Hoochie Coochie Man and all that fun stuff. And then a fun fact was he had a session guitarist, in the studio with the recording studio, and he went by the name of Buddy Guy. And so he's a disciple of Muddy Waters, started his career as a house guitarist for Muddy Waters. His notable songs, Mustang Sally, Damn Right I Got the Blues. I actually saw him live once, because when I worked Blues Fest in Portland, he was the headliner, so I got to see him for free. So I actually got paid to see him, so that's cool. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to talk about Bob Dylan, who a lot of people don't like, but is one of the most influential artists of all time. Maybe the second most influential artist behind the Beatles. Fun fact, his real name is Robert Zimmerman. And I have a couple things to say about him. In the 60s, he put out 5 classic albums in a row from 64 to 66, just busting out incredible songs. Part of the reasons he's influential is because he started out folk and really protesty songs, and then, I can't remember what year it was, at the Newport Folk Festival, he went electric, and that's one of the most legendary concerts of all time, and completely changed the folk game, but also validated a lot of rock and roll at the time. A few other reasons I love Bob Dylan. He is one of the most versatile artists of all time. From folk to rock and roll to a country album, Christian music, bluesy. He's done Frank Sinatra cover albums. He really is a musician who does not give a shit about anything or what anybody's opinions. The song Like a Rolling Stone broke a lot of boundaries because it is one of the longest, at the time, one of the longest singles that was a hit. It was 5.5 minutes when most songs were at 2.5 or 3 minutes. So he kind of opened up that door a little bit. He's known for his songwriting, his lyrics, which are truly just incredible. That's where he's most influential. And I believe that he's I haven't done any research into it, but he might be the only artist that has put out a very good album or great album from 60s to this decade.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, so 60s was his prime. 70s he put out Blood on the Tracks, maybe his best albums. All of the 80s was really shitty, except for in 89 he put out an album called Oh Mercy, which was alright. It wasn't great, but that's the one thing where maybe it wasn't a great album.
Yeah.
And in the late 90s he had a spur of great moments: Time Out of Man, Love and Theft, Modern Times, and that entered the 2000s with Modern Times and Love and Theft. He has not put out a great album this decade, but it's not too late.
Yep, he still has a couple of years.
Yeah.
I have 2 things to say about Bob Dylan, because you've covered most of the big stuff. The first being, that man aged 30 years in 4 years. If you look at most of his album covers, especially in the 60s, have his face on it. And if you look at his very first one, which I think was 60, what was it? Was it 62 or something like that? 63 maybe?
62, I think.
Okay.
Maybe 63.
So he looks like he's 12, honestly. He looks so young in that album. And then in his album 4 years later, he honestly looks like he's 40. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's insane.
He's taken a lot of drugs and a lot of cigarettes, which is also a drug, but still.
Yeah. So that's my first comment. My second comment is I actually really don't mind his vocals, especially early in his career. As he got older, he got the aging also occurred in his voice. But definitely in that first decade and the second decade, the 60s, 70s, I thought it was a value to what he was doing, because he was making protest music. It's not it's supposed to be harsh and a little off center. So I thought it worked really well. Especially
that's a very good point. I got one other fun fact. He's the first rock musician to ever win a Pulitzer Prize.
Oh yeah.
For his songwriting, so there's that too.
Yeah, that's cool. Alright, I'm going to talk about my last artist, and that's Jimi Hendrix. Just an absolute legend. Kind of like all the blues artists of the decades really built up to him in a lot of ways, like how Muddy Waters introduced amplification, and where guys like B.B. King and Buddy Guy took that. Hendrix really, embodies everything you think of with the 60s, with protest music, psychedelic, rock and roll and blues. He really only had a 4-year career as a solo artist, and he was only active for 7 years. He actually got his first like break as a good backup guitarist for Little Richard in the early 60s, which is a fun fact. A lot of people probably don't know.
That is a really fun fact.
A lot of people do know this fun fact, but he did play his guitar backwards, which is just astounding because he's one of the greatest guitarists of all time.
You know why he did?
Well, he's left-handed, and I'm assuming he just never bought a left-handed guitar.
Yeah.
So he just played it upside down, which is just insane. One of the most prominent members of the 27 Club, died at the age of 27. A lot of rumors around why that happened. They think like an ex-girl. Wasn't it like an ex-girlfriend poisoned him or something? Maybe. That's like one theory.
That's fun.
Not so fun fact. I'm going to name some songs that most people probably haven't heard, but they should, instead of naming some of his hits, because everyone really knows his hits. Because he only really made like 3 albums, right? So definitely try and find his live Star Spangled Banner. That song was just everything the protest movement was about then, and that's kind of why it became so famous, because people will get dramatize his performance in doing the Star Spangled Banner, saying all the extra sounds he was making exemplified and symbolized like the bombs of war that people were fighting against, and he's kind of intertwining that with the song. Another song that has my favorite song title of all time is on, I think, Electric Ladyland, is 1983, A Mermaid I Should Turn to Be. The title it's basically saying, like, by 1983 we'll all be nuked and dead and in the sea. That's kind of like the message behind the song title, but it's a great song that a lot of people haven't heard.
That's fun and uplifting.
Yeah. If 6 Was 9 is a good song, Manic Depression's a good song, but they're pretty much all good songs. He only made 3 albums, so like he didn't make like enough albums to have bad songs, really.
Yeah.
He was just so talented.
All right. So I'm going to talk about the Beatles. I wish we had a whole episode on this. I'm going to condense it a lot. So the Beatles broke into the scene in 1963. And was initially a boy band, so like a lot of teenage girls liked them. That was like their niche originally. Still making some great songs, like A Hard Day's Night is their best early album. It's a classic. And then they really started to change around 65. Help being one of their last kind of pop albums in that sense of pop. The part of the reason they started change is because Bob Dylan actually introduced them to weed. That's another fun fact, a little tidbit for you guys,
Oh, wow.
Drop you guys some knowledge right now. And they changed their music drastically. They helped introduce the psychedelic movement along with Jimi Hendrix and a lot of other bands in the 60s. And they just evolved into this just culture and inspired so many bands that were happening at the same time and in the future. And a lot of people are like, the Beatles are overrated. And if you listen to the radio hits that are still played, like Hey Jude and Let It Be, and you hear that 30 times a day, I get that, I get sick of songs all the time, like Hotel California. But
oh man, don't even get me started. That's gonna be a rant for an episode.
Oh, I'm excited. But if you listen to them and listen to their deep cuts, and they're truly just incredible songs. They also like to make fun of not make fun of, but copy bands. So Paul McCartney wrote back in the USSR to make fun of the Beach Boys, wrote Helter Skelter to imitate the Who. So they were one of the most versatile bands of all time. 3 of the best songwriters of all time. Maybe the 2 best ever. And then I also Googled best reasons why the Beatles are the best of all time. So here's some fun facts I'm going to just list off right now. In 1964, the Beatles occupied the top 5 positions of the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart, and that's before they even peaked. They have sold over 1 billion records. They have the most #1 albums in British album history. They have some of the most iconic cover art of all time with Sgt. Pepper's and Abbey Road. I think they're the only band where you could go up to any generation of people and they would know like at least 5 of their songs.
That's probably true.
Yeah. I think they're the first band to do a stadium concert. I think that's true. And they did all of this within 7 years, which is also wild.
Yeah, the one thing preparing for this episode was clearly I'm not the Beatles historian, you are, but the thing that surprised me was the time frame. Their whole career really took place within the 60s, and it feels like it spanned decades.
And they didn't even put anything out. Exactly. They didn't even put anything out the first 3 years. You know? Yeah. Like the way they evolved and the amount of music they put out feels like decades, but it happened in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, so that's crazy. One of the things that I kind of started doing, or I did this a while ago, was I started listening to the Beatles by songwriter, because I think it's just so fascinating. They have 3 like just amazing, all-time great songwriters. So if you go through and like just listen to the McCartney tracks, and then just listen to the Lennon tracks, and then just listen to the George Harrison tracks, it's just a different way to like approach it, and I found that kind of interesting.
I gotta do that. That's cool.
Yeah,
they're fantastic. Really, like if you're doubting me, truly give them a shot, and like listen to album by album, and I think you dig it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to like there. Would you like to move on to Fuck This Thing? We're running a little long this week, but that's all right.
Mine's gonna be quick.
All right, why don't you shoot first?
All right, my Fuck This Thing is shitty Wi-Fi, because that's the only thing I'm gonna have this summer. You've gotten in and out a lot of the time, which is fine. We roll. We're committed.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I can't stream videos though, which sucks. That's all I have. Fuck Wi-Fi.
My Fuck This Thing is it's more of a it's just a weird observation that I've made over the past few years. But there's a band called Tool, and they have a lot of just really creepy fans. So much so that I swear there's a Tool cult, is what I call them. And the members of the Tool cult all have this weird, very specific thing in common. And I swear, I've seen at least 5 or 6 different cars, and it's the type of car they drive, that's styled this exact way. They all drive black cars. They all have black tinted windows. They're all driven by men with like white hair that goes down to like past their ears, who are probably in their 40s or 50s. And they all have the Tool like logo on their. It's either in 2 places. It's either on the back windshield, like in the middle on the bottom, or it's on the front windshield on the top, like where the rearview mirror would be. And I swear to God, I've seen like 5 or 6 of these cars in like 3 different states. It's ridiculous. It's not the same car too. They're not necessarily the same make of car, but they're all black. They're all black and they all have tinted windows. It's ridiculous.
It's a little odd.
It's been enough times to not be a coincidence.
Yeah.
So fuck people in weird cults, maybe.
Absolutely. Especially Scientology.
Especially Scientology. Alrighty, so next week is 70s. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin,
Fleetwood Mac.
We could do Bruce Springsteen.
I will absolutely do Bruce Springsteen. Don't doubt it.
Well, no, I don't know if he's gonna be. He's gonna be 70s, right?
Yeah, he's gonna be 70s.
Okay. Yeah, we're definitely doing Bruce, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I'm sure there's a bunch of other bands we'll forget about, and then panic, like we have the past couple weeks when we discover there's so many great bands from this decade. So yeah, look forward to that.
Awesome. Have a good week.
Alrighty. Have a great week, everybody.
If you knew Peggy Sue, then you know why I feel blue without Peggy.